I'm going to run through a few trends that's been happening across the sector and in participation. For those who know me, I like a stat or two, so we're going to go through some of those. Okay, so where are we in terms of participation? Well, this is the results from the Active People Survey since 2006. And we're just about here, just above 36%. As you can see, it's a bit of a roller coaster, it's gone down and then up. But overall, statistically speaking, there's no change. So we're exactly the same as we were. Nationally in London, there has been a little rise. So we are kind of following the same trend, we're just a little bit lower than the rest. If we look at this slide, and I quite like this slide, it's quite an interesting slide, sports participation and age, and you can kind of see what I call the participation hill. So right at the end there, kind of 16, as we go through life, we're just on a downward projection. A few things to point out. You've got this big kind of drop off here at 16 to 25, and then it kind of plateaus off a little bit, sort of in your mid-30s into 40s, and then it's whee, all the way down again. Now what we've got here, we've got two lines, we've got two Active People surveys. It's quite interesting to look at the trend. In terms of the actual drop-off, it's actually become less pronounced, and more 16 to 24-year-olds are actually staying in sport. What is actually worrying, there's less 16-year-olds taking part in sport. So while we're kind of sorting out drop-off, there's actually less people coming through. So in future, we really kind of need to drive more kind of 16-year-olds into sport, or more importantly, get them early and perhaps sort of, so they can kind of transfer into adulthood. It's quite important to kind of recognise as well that whilst this is the average, certain population group, participations differ. So whilst sort of average 36% of the population take part in sport, I think we all know women, black and ethnic minorities, people with disability tend to have lower levels of participation. This kind of hides a whole lot of trends. But particularly at this bit up here, this drop-off, people from those groups I just mentioned actually drop off a lot more. So people from a higher socio-economic background, measure things like income, education level, tend to stay quite high participation, but people with lower socio-economic status tend to just slide straight down. So I think particularly that's a real challenge going forward. How do we keep that kind of group of people actually within sport? So if we look at the mode of participation, and I've actually kind of borrowed this from my colleague Matt Eames, who kind of developed this. This actually shows how people take part in sport. The first thing to point out, and this kind of circle over here, is most sports take part outside of a club setting. So when we think of sport, we always think about a sports club, but what the statistics tell us is most people actually take part in sport outside. And the recent trends show us the number of people in clubs are actually shrinking a little bit, and people outside the clubs are actually going up a little bit. So there's a trend sort of happening there. Also, what's happened over the last couple of years, we kind of see this kind of switching from kind of more from structured activity to club activity, to more unstructured, also from team sports to individual sports. There's a little bit of trend going on there as well. If we look at the drivers of participation, so we start over here with kind of the social drivers. Obviously, we're here today to talk about the Olympics. I've got a few stats here I've found. A recent survey by the Sport and Recreation Lions says that 2 in 5 clubs are actually seeing their levels of membership actually go up since the Olympics. So perhaps there is some sort of legacy effect going there. A recent poll by Radio 5 released in January say 1 in 5 people in this country actually have been inspired to take part in more sport. Again, what that figure doesn't show is certain groups haven't been inspired. So women and older people haven't been inspired to take part in more sport. So there certainly is some sort of legacy effect going on from the Olympics. The other really kind of important driver in terms of participation is actual kind of demographic and population changes. So I guess a really big one is life. People are generally getting more and more busy and have less time to actually take part in sport. So a recent Sport England survey showed 30% of people say they haven't got enough time to take part in sport, while 50% cite changes in their life circumstances as a reason for dropping out. So people's lives are a real big driver for why people take part in sport and indeed why they drop out. The other kind of population things we've got is demographic drivers. So demographically speaking, we are all getting older, and that's going to drive participation level down on average. We've become more diverse, certainly within London, and that also is on average going to drive our participation levels down. And the other one is, there's been a bit of a baby boom about 4 or 5 years ago. So you get more young adults with babies, and that is also going to drive participation levels down. And those trends are just going to increase, increase over the next couple of years. Okay, now we're going to move on to political kind of drivers. And when I say political, I don't just mean sort of central government. I mean central government, local government, even with schools. This, I guess, is why we're here today, to talk about the things we can actually do, put policy in place to actually drive participation up, and that can have a huge effect on participation levels. On the corner there, we've got technology. Now, technology, if you like, I guess, competes with sport in some ways in terms of sedentary activity, things like computers and screen time. However, I think there's fantastic opportunities there, using the power of the internet, social media, and new ways to take part in sport to actually really kind of boost participation up. There's some really good examples like parkrun that use the internet to actually get more people taking part in their activity. And lastly, we've got economic factors, and this is a real big factor at the moment, actually driving participation down. As you all know, we're in a bit of a bad position in the economy, and that will have an impact, particularly on some people within the community in terms of their participation. I've got a nice little slide I'll show you in a minute on that one. And then right in the middle, we've obviously got everyone in this room in terms of the sports industry, all those people that provide sport and support sport. They really have an important place to kind of drive participation up in terms of the type of opportunity and the availability of opportunity. And I think it's been fantastic, fantastic things happening over the last couple of years in terms of new ways to take part in sport. So that can really kind of help drive things up. The other thing that's really important is actually sustainability and capacity. That survey I mentioned earlier from the Sport and Recreation Life in terms of 2 and 5 clubs actually experiencing more people coming into their sport, also actually showed that 50% of the clubs say they have a problem getting facilities, and almost 45% of the clubs can't grow because they haven't got the funding to grow. So that's a real big issue, and perhaps this kind of political kind of factors down the bottom can actually help enable them to grow bigger. Now this is my graph, I like this one. Okay, what you've got here, you've got 2 wiggly lines, and for those who can't see, the blue line is GDP, which is a measure of economic climate, and the red line is actually participation. As you can kind of see, as one goes down, the other one goes down as well, but not directly. It actually goes down 3/4 of a period later. So for every percent GDP goes up or down, participation actually goes down by about 1/4%. So whatever we do, perhaps the economy is going to have a real massive hit in terms of participation, and particularly amongst certain groups. So 16 to 24-year-olds, that bit of the drop-off really is affected by the economy. They've really been affected by it. More expensive sports and club sports have really been affected by the downturn in the economy. And with the uncertainty going forward, what's going to kind of happen to those kind of participation numbers? So I guess sort of in summary, the challenges going forward. So how do we keep them coming through? How do we increase them coming through? So certainly schools have a big part to play in that potentially. How do we stop them dropping out? Transitioning. Transition seems to be a big issue. That's where people stop taking part in sport and drop out. So how do we aid people transition from school to college to job into parenthood? How do we kind of manage that transition? How do we get them back? We saw on the kind of slide, kind of around 30s, 40s, it kind of levels off a little bit. So that's a great age. People tend to get more back in sport. So what can we do to actually kind of encourage them back into sport? In terms of sort of menu of opportunities, becoming more diverse in terms of who we are. So we need to look at informal, informal, and how we provide sport and what we provide to make sure we cater for everyone's needs. And then the last one, I haven't got any answers. Economic conditions, what to do. Aging population, what to do. More diverse population, what to do. So I think there's lots of challenges out there, and hopefully we're going to get lots of answers today. So that's all I'm going to say, and I'm going to pass over to the next speaker. Thank you.